Why do human beings feel such a strong need to prove reality, its existence, its meaning, its truth, when they almost never question the simple fact that they are already experiencing it? This question exposes a paradox at the center of modern thinking. People demand evidence for truth, certainty for meaning, and verification for what they accept as real. Yet the act of demanding proof already assumes something fundamental, that there is a reality within which proof can occur at all. Modern intellectual culture tends to treat reality as valid only when it is measurable, verifiable, or conceptually demonstrable. If something cannot be tested, explained, or justified, it is often regarded with suspicion. However, this approach creates an internal contradiction. To test reality, one must already exist within it. To doubt reality, one must already be aware. Even skepticism itself requires a stable field of experience in which doubt can arise. The central claim of this lecture is precise and limited. Reality does not need proof, because proof operates within reality, not outside it. This is not a rejection of science or rational inquiry. It is an epistemological analysis of how certainty, evidence, and perception actually function. To examine this with clarity, we turn to the work of Ibn Arabi, whose metaphysical framework explains why ultimate reality is self-evident, yet consistently misunderstood by human cognition. In psychological terms, modern individuals live under a persistent pressure to justify their beliefs, identities, and experiences. This pressure manifests as chronic doubt, existential insecurity, and an over-intellectualization of meaning. When certainty is absent, discomfort arises. The common response is to increase analysis, explanation, and conceptual control. Cognitive psychology describes this tendency as the need for cognitive closure and discomfort with ambiguity and uncertainty. When this combines with a hyper-rational control bias, a powerful assumption emerges that explanation equals mastery. If something can be fully explained, it feels manageable. If it cannot, it feels threatening. At a cultural level, this produces a recognizable pattern. Truth must be defended. Beliefs must be justified. Existence itself must be validated externally. Nothing is allowed to simply be. Every experience is evaluated, categorized, and measured. While this approach appears intellectually rigorous, it carries a psychological cost. Constant mental evaluation increases stress fragments, attention, and weakens direct engagement with experience. Over time, life becomes something to analyze rather than inhabit. The demand for proof, then, is not a neutral intellectual habit. It arises from a deep mistrust of experience itself. Ibn Arabi is often mischaracterized as a poetic mystic or symbolic thinker. In reality, he was a rigorous metaphysician, deeply concerned with how knowledge arises, stabilizes, and fails. His work systematically analyzes perception, awareness, and certainty at a structural level. One of his most important distinctions is between existence, wujud, and conceptual representation. Existence, for Ibn Arabi, is not a theory, belief, or inference. It is the immediate condition in which all experience occurs. Concepts, by contrast, are mental tools used to describe, organize, and interpret that experience. His enduring relevance lies in identifying a universal cognitive error, the tendency to confuse symbols of reality with reality itself. When concepts are treated as more real than experience, certainty collapses into anxiety. Ibn Arabi's arguments are not mystical assertions. They are internally logical analyses of how knowledge functions and where it exceeds its proper domain. To understand why reality does not require proof, we must first understand how proof itself works and where its limits become unavoidable. The first principle in Ibn Arabi's framework is simple but frequently overlooked. Evidence presupposes existence. Proof does not generate reality. It depends on it. There is a clear, logical sequence at work. First, there is perception, then awareness of perception, then interpretation. Only after these stages does proof appear. You cannot step outside existence in order to verify it. Every attempt to do so already takes place within the very reality being questioned. In everyday experience, this is obvious. Vision does not require proof in order to occur. Pain does not need justification to be real. Experience announces itself before any explanation is applied. From a neuroscientific perspective, sensory processing occurs before conceptual labeling. The brain registers stimuli milliseconds before conscious interpretation begins. This means reality is encountered directly before it is explained. Explanation is secondary. Ibn Arabi describes existence as self-disclosing. It reveals itself through presence, not argument. This does not imply that logic is invalid. It means logic cannot validate its own ground. Reason operates within existence, not above it. Proof, by its nature, compares representations. It evaluates statements, symbols, measurements, and models. What it cannot do is access existence itself as an object. A functional analogy clarifies this point. A map can describe land in detail, but it cannot verify that land exists. The existence of land is assumed before the map is created. In cognitive science, metacognition operates in a similar way. It evaluates thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations, but not awareness itself. You can analyze what you think, but you cannot step outside consciousness to verify. Consciousness as an external object. Ibn Arabi frames reality as the condition of possibility for all distinctions. Without existence, there are no objects, no subjects, and no proofs. This leads to a precise implication. Searching for proof of reality is structurally misguided. It is like using a mirror to confirm the existence of light. The mirror only functions because light is already present. The conclusion follows directly. Proof is derivative. Existence is primary. Doubt is often treated as evidence. Against truth, skepticism is assumed to weaken certainty. Ibn Arabi reverses this assumption by examining doubt structurally. Doubt itself requires awareness, presence, and experiential continuity. To doubt something, it must already appear within experience. Logically, doubt cannot negate the ground that allows it to occur. If you doubt reality, that doubt is still an experience taking place within reality. The act of doubting confirms participation rather than absence. From a psychological perspective, anxiety disorders illustrate this clearly. Excessive doubt intensifies when attention turns inward and becomes hyper-monitoring. The problem is not a lack of reality, but an over-interpretation of experience. Doubt multiplies when cognition attempts to secure certainty where none is required. Doubt then does not negate reality. It confirms it. Skepticism collapses if it attempts to deny the very ground that enables skepticism to function. Ibn Arabi distinguishes between two modes of knowing, observational and participatory. Observational knowing assumes distance between knower and known. Participatory knowing recognizes EMB, EDD, in ESS. His position is unambiguous. Human beings are not observers standing outside reality. They are expressions within it. Neuroscience supports this view. The brain does not passively record an external world. It actively participates in constructing experience through perception, prediction, and interpretation. In contemporary consciousness studies, awareness cannot be objectified without distortion. The moment you attempt to observe it as an object, it becomes something else. Reality does not need proof, because it is not external to the knower. It is the very medium through which knowing occurs. Proof presupposes participation. A subtle but critical error underlies the modern obsession with proof, the confusion of epistemic certainty with existential security. Modern thought often assumes that if something can be fully explained, it becomes safe. This assumption drives a compulsive explanation. Psychologically, this leads to chronic explanatory fatigue. Overanalysis replaces lived understanding. Mental activity increases, but clarity does not. Ibn Arabi warns that excessive conceptualization veils immediacy. Concepts are tools meant to serve. Understanding, not foundations, meant to replace experience. The paradox resolves itself at this point. The more reality is defended, the more distant it feels. Certainty pursued through explanation erodes. Direct engagement, the attempt to secure reality through proof, undermines the very stability it seeks. In practical terms, Ibn Arabi's insight invites a shift rather than a belief. The shift is away from compulsive justification and toward direct engagement. In cognitive practice, this involves attention, regulation, noticing experience before labeling it, and emotional regulation, allowing sensations without immediately constructing narratives around them. Modern psychological research on mindfulness aligns with this insight. Anxiety decreases when evaluative loops are bypassed. Stress levels drop when experience is allowed to unfold without constant interpretation. Trusting perception stabilizes cognition more effectively than continuous analysis. When meaning is not constantly interrogated, experience becomes more coherent. Reality is stabilized not by proof, but by participation. Reality is the precondition of proof. Doubt presupposes. Presence, explanation, operates within existence, not outside it. The demand for proof arises from a misunderstanding of the role of cognition. Reality does not need proof because it is already doing the proving through experience itself. When the need to validate existence dissolves, effort gives way to clarity. Understanding becomes simpler. Not because less is known, but because what was never in question is finally recognized as such.